All right, we'll just wait one more second. Well, maybe a couple seconds, but not much longer. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today, our Advanced Resume and LinkedIn workshop. My name is Lucas Passo, and I am the Professional Development Chair for the Chicago School Student Association. For those of you who don't know, we are the Chicago School Student Association. We are a group of students that works to plan programming and events and conversations that help to enrich the student community outside of the classroom. I will say that we are looking for new members. So if what we do sounds like it's of interest to you, please feel free to reach out. I don't know, Megan, if you want to drop. Perfect. Megan actually just dropped the link to our application form in the chat here. So if you are interested in joining us, we would love to have you. You'll find all the information you need on that form. So as I said, today we are talking about advanced resume and LinkedIn skills. For those of you who joined us during our last session, we covered some more basic resume and LinkedIn skills. So this will be a little bit more of an advanced session. And we are lucky and grateful to have the Assistant Director of Career Services here today with us, Elka Hart, who will be walking you through the information that she's prepared. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Elka. I will just say we're happy to answer any questions that you might have throughout the course of our presentation. Just go ahead and drop those into the chat, and I'll moderate those questions either during the presentation or we'll cover them at the end. So yeah, without further ado, Elka, go ahead and take it over.
Thanks so much, Lucas and Megan, for providing me this opportunity again. Really enjoyed the first session, and hopefully the second one, which has a little bit more in-depth information around resumes and using LinkedIn, will prove helpful to those of you who are here. I don't know if you were here for the first session. I might refer to it sometimes. So I hope that's okay. I have put my email address in the chat. Please feel free to ask questions. Megan, you might just interrupt me if there are any pressing ones so that I don't just talk for an hour. So I'm going to start with some true and false, although the answers are already there. But I just thought it might be like a good review for some of the things that we talked about last time. So first of all, if your resume is good enough, it'll get you the job, which is false. So there was a time back when I was certainly younger and going through my job search when it could have been the case. If somebody was loud enough with that piece of paper that you gave them, they might have just hired you on the spot without much else. But that's certainly not the case nowadays. The resume's job is to get you the interview. So there are other things that you have to do, like write a good cover letter, have some consistent communication with the recruiter, get through the interview, do well there, follow up, all of that. And then all those things will help you get the job. But the resume is just that very first piece of it. Secondly, a resume should be like an autobiography, which is also false. We discussed last time, the resume is really just a summary. So 1 to 2 pages, it's very concise. You're really just putting on the resume that information that is most relevant to any position that you're applying for. You'll hear me say that a lot today. So you're targeting that information towards the employer and the job listing. Recruiters do not read it word for word. They spend maybe 6 to 10 seconds scanning the resume. And so you want the information to be found very quickly, which leaves, not a lot of time. So you don't want it to be too many pages. And that's different for a CV. A CV can be longer, but not a resume. All right, thirdly, an easy and effective way to create or update your LinkedIn profile is to just copy and paste from your resume. Also false. Although they are similar in terms of what kind of information they're presenting, the LinkedIn profile is not just like a list of all of your work experience. There are other sections and you can customize it. And they do suggest that you, instead of just writing brief bullet statements on your LinkedIn profile, you can actually write nice long paragraphs because people will take much longer to review your information. So don't just copy and paste. What I will say is that the information should be similar, so consistent, right? You don't want to have some jobs on your LinkedIn profile that are nowhere to be found on your resume, because then recruiters might start wondering. Fourth, send LinkedIn requests to just as many people as you can, because the goal is to max out your number of connections. And although that sounds like a really great idea, it's not recommended, so that's also false. We recommend what we call targeted networking. So to really connect strategically with people that you are in some way connected to, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it does end up being more effective. And lastly, if you don't have a personal photo of yourself, just crop your head out of a recent Facebook photo, which I may or may not have done at some point in my life, and use that as your LinkedIn profile picture. So again, false. Your LinkedIn photo should be professional looking. You should be wearing professional attire, because it's really important to make that great first impression, right? And we're going to talk more about photos in a little bit. So we have two big topics today. One is around resume and what you can do with that. And then the whole LinkedIn thing, which is much more than just creating a profile. So we'll start with resumes. Now that you've got one, what do we do with it and why do we need it, etc. The first thing you always want to make sure you're doing is updating it on a regular basis. So if you want to just put a little reminder on your phone, or just know that once a month or once a term, you're going to go and update the information. When you graduate, for instance, you want to be sure to update your grad date. As you're completing any related coursework, you want to include that on your resume. Anytime you're finishing up a job, whether it's full or part-time, or completing a practicum, or whatever the case might be, you want to be sure to add those on there in the relevant sections. Your skill section will always be updated. You're going to tailor it for each position, of course, that you're applying to. And, you know, as the years go by, you will develop more skills. And so you want to make sure that you're adding those on there as well. And then, of course, you know, things like your thesis or dissertation, as those are completed, or if you're doing any kind of research, those are things that you want to remember to add on as well. So just keep updating it as you go. You might also want to consider having different versions of your resume for a variety of reasons. So for instance, I have two very distinct types of resumes. I have one that is career services focused. That's been the bulk of my professional career, has been in that industry. But I've also done a lot of teaching. And so for a while that was where I was applying. And so I have like a teacher resume, and the information on both of them is similar, but necessarily in a different order, right? So whatever is most relevant to what I'm applying to would go higher up on top of the document. And so if you are considering applying to different industries, to very different types of jobs, you know, take the time now to go ahead and craft those different resumes so that you have them ready to send out whenever it's time. The other way that you want to have different versions ready to go is to keep like one copy as a Word document and then one as a PDF. So the PDF version is one that you would email out if somebody requests an emailed version of your resume. If you are applying online, then the Word document works better through the what we call the ATS, or the automated tracking system. And that is something I'm going to talk about in more detail. Again, as if I don't say it enough, you want to make sure that you're always tailoring your resume for each application. Just make it focused. It will garner many more hits if you really take the time to do that. And I said this earlier, is just to keep your LinkedIn profile content consistent with what's on your resume or CV, so that there aren't any gaps or missing information and recruiters are wondering if you're trying to hide something or whatever. So always be updating both at the same time. And lastly, you're always welcome to upload your resume or CV into Handshake, which is our career management platform that we use in career services. A couple more thoughts about updating it on a regular basis. So for a CV, as you complete experiences or accomplish milestones, or whatever the case might be, you're going to add pretty much all of that on a CV because it's just a running list of all of your achievements. In your resume, you will really only add whatever is relevant, right? So that's going to be a little bit different. Something else to consider is anytime a job ends, any kind of experience is finished, you always want to remember to go back into your resume and change the date. So if you've been working there from November 2019 and it's current, but now you've finished that job or the internship is over, you want to go back in and include an end date. And then also, because you are no longer there, you will want to change your bulleted statements into past tense. So those things sound like just little itty bitty, things that maybe you won't think about doing, but it's important to, because you want consistency in terms of formatting on your resume, and recruiters, they do look at that as a reason to put you in the no pile. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping that updated at all times. And then the other thing I was thinking about is, as you add more information, sometimes you'll go on to another page. You'll go from a 2-page resume maybe to a third. So you just always want to make sure to add your name and page number to the subsequent pages. And also, particularly if it's a resume, if you go on to another page, make sure that that last page is at least half full of information, just so that it looks complete and that it, you're giving the employer a reason to even read it, because you don't want them to miss out on something important that you've put there because it's only like 2 lines on an otherwise white piece of paper. So just make sure that you think about that. Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about those bulleted statements or the job descriptions, which I've stated, in the last session, that can sometimes be a challenge for people to write, because you're trying to say, as much as possible with as few words as possible. So one way to think about formatting that statement is with this formula that somebody came up with, where you're using an action word plus the tasks that you performed, plus the result. So what happened as a result of what you were doing, and that equals your bulleted statement. So an example would be here towards the bottom: prioritize multiple tasks in a fast-paced environment to meet weekly deadlines. So prioritize is the action word or verb. The multiple tasks is the task. And why you're doing that is to meet weekly deadlines. So that would be the result. Another example is to collaborate with multidisciplinary healthcare team, optimizing patient care and outcomes. So just taking a little bit of time to actually think about not just a list of your duties, but how does that impact the employer, or how does that affect, the work that you're doing? What kinds of results are you getting? Employers really look for that. So this formula might be helpful for you as you're writing that section on your document. So as I was considering what to discuss today. I was thinking that maybe we could, cover some of the things not to include on a resume. Sometimes people have questions about this. One big piece is the addition of personal information like your age or social security number, religious or political affiliations, your relationship status, things like that. They are not to be added on your resume here in the US. In other countries, you might be asked to do that. So if you are applying to a position in another country, you want to make sure that you know what their policies and procedures are for things like that. And if you are, let's say, moving to France and you're applying for a job there, they will ask you to add your nationality as well as your visa status so that they know that you are able and eligible to work in their country. So those are things that you wouldn't obviously think about adding here if you're doing a job search in the US, but it's different in other places. So it's just something to keep in mind. There's a lot of debate about whether or not to include hobbies or interests. Many people think that it has the ability of setting you apart from other candidates if you include things that maybe are different, or the reader gets a little bit more insight into the kind of person you are and what you do outside of working. Other people think that it's just a use of space that could be better used for other sections that are more relevant, which is always the key word when you're writing resumes. So I don't know what to recommend to you. Sometimes I feel like putting things on there because I think that they are unique enough that might, cause somebody to want to ask me some questions in an interview. And other times I just leave it completely off. So at the end of the day, it's your decision on what to do. I'm happy to have that conversation with you and to help you make your own decisions. But at least consider just, how unique your hobbies or interests are. And if they're really like something that not many people in the world do, then by all means, include it. But then also just really, again, be thinking about how relevant it is to the job or the industry or the employer that you're applying to. I think I mentioned this last time, but the statement references available upon request is not necessary on a resume. It's, again, just a line, a space that can be used for other things. It's obviously implied that you will be providing references to the employer when asked. So just have a completely separate sheet, a document ready to go with your contact information up top, and then a list of about 3 to 5 references with their contact information on there. So things like personal social media sites, especially like Facebook, and sometimes people want to put Pinterest and all kinds of other things on there. We discourage students from including those, just keep it professional. LinkedIn is a professional site, and so that's something that should go on your resume. But if it's not work related or relevant, then just keep it off. Sometimes people include their salary history. So they'll, with every job that they list, they'll add, what their hourly or monthly rate was. And that's, like, it's not appropriate. The salary discussion is something that happens in the interview, and you always want to make sure that it's the employer who's initiating that conversation, as much as you want to know how much you might make. And it's hard not to ask sometimes, but really, and it's a game, and we all know that it's a game, but the employer should start that conversation with you. So even if you have like a desired salary range for the job you're applying to, don't add that on your resume. Okay, no numbers. There's no need to include like a reason why you left a position. That doesn't have to go on a resume. If employers want to know why you left, they'll ask you in the interview. And then a photo, a headshot. So we discussed this very briefly last time. You're discouraged from including that on a resume unless, again, you're becoming a model or an actor. But other than that, there's no reason to put a picture of yourself on your resume, at least here in the US. And we're going to have a bigger discussion around that right here. So we were wondering, why should people not put their headshot on a resume? And yet it's really encouraged on LinkedIn profile. So the difference is this. The resume is very specifically a job application, right? You're applying to a very specific position that requires a very particular skill set and qualifications, and your looks are not included as part of that. There are actually laws against that. So you cannot be discriminated against for the way you look. So it might be, unintentional on the part of the recruiter, but it can lead to unconscious bias if they see your photo and for whatever reason, they decide, you know what, this is just not the candidate for us. They could get into a heap of trouble. And that, and that's obviously the biggest and most important reason. But also with the automated tracking systems, any photos or images on a resume will not be read correctly. And so that completely messes up your uploading of the documents. So best not to put photos on a resume. On the other hand, with LinkedIn, LinkedIn is not only used for job search, it's first and foremost a networking site. And networking, people do realize that people are more comfortable connecting with others if they see a face. If you think about the olden days when we would go to conferences and meet people face to face for networking purposes before Zoom and all of that, it does allow for more connection and engagement, I think, if you're face to face with somebody. So including a photo of yourself on your LinkedIn profile allows for that opportunity to connect. Maybe you just feel like you know that person better because you see what they look like, and it has nothing to do with you getting a job or not. It's just about the connection. So that's the main difference between the two. We talk a lot about skills when writing a resume. More and more employers are doing what we call skills-based recruiting. It obviously depends on the industry that you're in, what kind of positions that you're applying for. But skills are a huge part of resume writing. And when we talk about the ATS, the automated tracking system, then you'll better understand the reason for that. So we talk often about hard skills versus soft skills. Hard skills are more of the industry specific or technical skills that you develop to do a very particular job. And those should be included in a skills section on your resume. The soft skills, which are more the transferable skills or like people or human skills, they're called nowadays. Those, you can put them in the skills section, but what people are saying is that it's better to describe them in your bulleted statements when you are writing about your jobs. So here we have just a small example. If multitasking is one of the skills that expected in the job you're applying for, and it's something that you do well, then you could write something like this if it applies to one of your jobs, led multiple projects simultaneously from start to completion, leading to a 35% increase in widget production or whatever the case might be. So that statement allows employers to see that you are able to multitask, and it gives them something tangible to understand. They see what you're able to do at that job, so you might be able to do it for them as well. instead of just listing it as simply multitasking in a long list of skills in the skills section, you're actually describing it, which is really what employers want to see. On the right side of this slide, so this comes from the Professional Organization for Career Services. They're called NACE. And every year they do a survey across the nation of employers, and they ask them which attributes or skills they're looking for in successful candidates as they go about hiring new grads. And so it's just showing a comparison of this upcoming class of 2022 versus last year's class. And the skills are usually always the same, but the order might change a little bit. So you'll see last year, ability to work in a team came up first. This year, with quite a majority, 85% is problem solving skills. So as you look down this list, you'll see, a lot of things like the teamwork or communication skills, leadership, technical skills that you probably have without even, thinking about it too much. But at least you see that employers are really putting a lot of emphasis on this. These are things that they want to see in their successful candidates. And so whether or not these skills are in the job description, make sure that you include them if you have them in your resume somewhere. Okay, because employers are really looking for these. All right, so I wanted to spend some time talking about the automated tracking system, because this is a huge way that that you're applying for positions, whether you realize it or not, when you apply online. So an ATS, it's a recruitment software, and it was really created in order to make the recruiting process easier for employers. There are different ways that recruiters use it. It's essentially a searchable database. So when you apply to a position online, your resume and whatever else they ask for, cover letter, is going to end up in their system, and they're going to store it in there. And sometimes all they do is just keep it there, and they've got your contact information. So they might email you or send you other jobs that maybe you're a match for. Most employers nowadays use some form of ATS. I know that when I applied to my position here at the Chicago School, that went through an ATS, and we use Workday. There are over 400 different types of these systems. And you'll know that you're applying through an ATS if you're on an employer webpage, and then you see the click here to apply button. And when you click there, it takes you to an external website where you're no longer on the employer website. Then you know it's taking you to the ATS. Okay. So different ways that they might screen as to whether you're a successful candidate for the job you're applying for or not. The one way is that they will rank the applications. So they're going to look at your resume, and then they're going to look at the job description, and they decide what percentage of keywords from the job description do they want to find on your resume. So usually it's between 60 and 70%. It's rare for anybody to have 100, but they decide on sort of what the cutoff is. And so if you are compared to the job description and you make it to 70, and that's what their bottom line was, then you will make it through, and your resume will actually be seen by human eyes, right? If you score less than 70, then that's it. Your application will not go any further, and you might not ever hear from them again, which is very frustrating. So that's one way that it's done. The other way is that a recruiter might simply do a keyword search inside the system. So let's say that you've applied for a position and this employer's ATS has, hundreds of applications, including yours, in there. And so the recruiter is looking for, let's say, research skills. So they just put in research. That's their keyword search. Only those resumes that have the word research on them will come up. And then those are the applications that go through to the next phase of the process. Okay. Unfortunately, again, you're not always going to know how the employer you're applying to, how they use the system. So the only thing that you can do is prepare your resume as best as possible to be considered and to make it through the system. And there are two things that I think are really important. One is the keyword piece of it, and then the second one is your formatting. So the keywords, it helps you understand maybe why we are always stressing that you tailor your resume according to the job description, right? Because those are exactly the keywords that the employer is using to either, put you through to the next phase or to put you in the no pile. So some things that you should look for when you are looking at the job listing is, are there any words that are bolded? Because if they're bolding them in the job description, chances are those are the things that are important to them, right? So make a list of the bolded words, make a list of any words that are used more than once. So if they keep repeating that they need somebody with strong communication skills, if you see that, all throughout the job listing, then chances are that's something that's really critical for them. So make sure that you make note of that. Oftentimes they'll ask for a particular number of years of experience. So make sure that that is stated somewhere on your resume and keep consistent with what they're asking for. So if they're asking for 2 years of experience, then that's what you would say. And it's not about lying. It's about wording it in such a way that you are telling your truth, but you're also matching their terminology, right? Because that's how the system reads it. They're looking for very specific things. Another example is like education. If they're asking for a specific degree, it's a bachelor's degree, then you want to make sure that you're listing yours on there, okay? Or that you're pursuing a bachelor's degree or something. You write it in such a way that the word bachelor's is included in there, all right? The thing, and I think I mentioned this earlier, the thing that you don't want to do is just simply cut and paste the job listing into your resume, because they will know. The resume needs to sound like you. You have to write it with your own words, but using the keywords that are in the job listing. So it's a bit of a balance. Okay. The other really important thing with the ATS is the formatting of the resume. So first and foremost, you're going to want to save the document as a Word document. Okay, that's the easiest for the ATS to read. Ideally, you don't want to use templates. It's very difficult for ATS to read things like headers and charts and columns and text boxes and strange bullets and all of that. Your information, it won't be parsed. It's going to come out all scrambled. And for instance, if your contact information is in an actual header, it's going to get lost, right? The ATS, it doesn't read headers. And so it's only going to grab the information that it can read. And so the recruiter won't have your name or contact info given to them. And so they won't know who to reach out to if they love the rest of the information on your resume, right? So it has to be very simple. Try to keep it to 2 pages if at all possible. Make sure that there are no typos. grammatical errors, keep the font simple, keep your margins at least a ½ inch to 1 inch so that there's enough white space around. Again, save it as a Word document. And one example that they mention that's very specific is that the way an ATS prefers to read dates. So you'll see on the very bottom that it's like the month with numbers and then the complete year. So March would be 03 / whatever year it is, 2021. Or you can also write out the month, March 2021. But don't just use 2 numbers for the year. Don't abbreviate the month. That first way with the 2 spaces for the month and 4 for the year is the most preferred way. So that was something new to me that I did not know. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with resume optimizers. This is something that's become quite popular for people to use. I'll just show you one of them. I won't have the time to go through it. Hopefully it'll come. So the 2 that I'm aware of are JobScan and EMSI. There's no cost. I mean, you can get other packages with JobScan, but you don't have to pay. But it's really cool because what you can do is paste or upload your resume on this side and then add the job description that you're applying to on this side. And then you scan it, and I'll just use the sample one. It's going to scan it and it's going to let you know how much you match the keywords. So the sample matches 60%. And you can, read through and see which skills you didn't have on your resume that maybe you should add, and just gives you really great tips. So the other one, EMSI, does something very similar. So I'd encourage you to use those. If you are interested, just let me know and I can send you the link to those. Before we switch to LinkedIn, I just wanted to mention COVID real quick. If you feel very strongly or you think that the employer is going to ask you about your vaccination status and it's important for you, that you share that with them, then by all means, it's appropriate to include it on your resume as well as your LinkedIn profile. If you're not comfortable doing it, just understand that the employer you're applying to might have some kind of requirements, right? So you'll have to know about those. And it's just something to keep in mind that if you're applying to a remote job, then obviously it's not necessary. But speaking of remote work, something because of COVID that you'll want to add onto your resume, maybe in the skills section, is any of the remote collaboration technologies that you've been using, like Zoom or Skype or whatever else there is, Slack and WebEx and all of the other ones. That's a great addition to your skills section. Okay. So with the time that we have left, I'm going to talk about LinkedIn. I'm so sorry, I'm running out of time. LinkedIn, it's not just your profile, right? You use it for a variety of reasons, and there's just so much wealth of information in there. You can use it to make connections. You can use it to research employers and industries. You can do an actual job search in there. You can stay on top of industry trends and read about, all the latest news that's going on in the world. So just a lot of ways that you can benefit from really being engaged with LinkedIn. In terms of connections, always start with people you know, especially if you're not comfortable reaching out to strangers. Starting there and then asking them for recommendations, and you'll see your network just grow exponentially. When you're comfortable and have done all of that, then you can start reaching out to people who work at those organizations that you're interested in applying for, right? So that you know people there, you can ask them questions, do an informational interview. You can also connect with other people by joining groups. LinkedIn, they have a lot of groups, and they vary. They can be industry specific. So I belong to groups that are around like higher ed or career services or student affairs. So whatever your interest is or industry you want to get into, look for those, look for professional organizations, and then definitely connect with alumni. Okay. In terms of researching, particularly when you're ready to interview, there's so much information on an employer page. You can follow employers and then be notified anytime they have new job openings or if they've posted an article or are just talking about something that's going on in their company. You'll get organization info. You'll get a list of their employees who are also in LinkedIn, so you can start researching them. You can comment on their posts. And anytime you do anything, you're engaging with the feed, the news feeds, it makes you more visible. And that's what you want. You want people to notice you in LinkedIn so that they're much more willing to connect with you and get to know you and understand what it is that you're looking for if you're in a job search, right? So again, engaging with the LinkedIn community, if that's something that you are not used to doing, then just start small. Just read your feed and just like the posts. Maybe you want to comment on them. Maybe you're even going to repost something. You can share posts on your own feed. And then just set some small goals for yourself, you know, that you're going to log in to LinkedIn once a day, or that you're, you know, once a month, you are going to update your profile, or that you are going to connect with maybe 5 people a week. You know, start however is comfortable for you, but keep it consistent because that allows for things to grow. And then check your dashboard, which is below your profile information, because it's actually going to show how often people are viewing your profile, how often you are actually end up in a search. So you've made appearances on somebody else's page, perhaps. You can get email notifications about that. So it's just kind of cool to be watching those numbers and see how you're getting more exposure on LinkedIn. So at the top of the LinkedIn page, I spent some time last time looking at the different tabs at the top. So there's like the home page and your connections. And then the briefcase is the job search tab. So when you click on that, you will see everything that's here at the top. So you can search by title or skill or company name. You can search by location. If you just start with location and hit search, you will then come to this area where you can actually search for in all different ways. And I have listed them here. Sorry about that. So you can search by experience level, by job type, whether it's on-site or remote. You can do it by industry. You can do it by job title. Like there's just so many ways that you can search. And then once you find kind of what you're looking for, then you can save jobs, or you can actually create a job alert that anytime a job similar to what you have searched for appears on LinkedIn, you can either get a notification in LinkedIn or you can get an email notification. So I created one for the Chicago School just for fun. And what happens, it's kind of neat, is when you set your preferences and what you're looking for, then it tells you. So there are 144 jobs with the Chicago School right now throughout the States. And over here, if I flip this to the right, which I did, I'm going to set my alert. So anytime there's a new job posted, I will be notified about it. Okay. The other way to set job alerts is by going directly to a company's page inside of LinkedIn. So this Korn Ferry is an HR consulting firm. So I'm on their homepage, and you see as you go down, create job alert. So when you click on that, anytime Korn Ferry posts a job in LinkedIn, I'll be notified. One thing that was new to me as I was getting ready for this workshop is, because I'm not looking for work, on your profile page under your photo, there's a tab called, or a button called Open To. When you click on that, it'll give you an option to say that you're open to finding a job. And when you click on that, it'll let you choose like what kind of job you're looking for. Is it full or part-time, on-site or remote, kind of industry, things like that. And so that will be in your profile, okay? And what's really cool is if you go to your settings, your privacy settings, and then you go to job seeking preferences, towards the bottom, it'll say this: signal your interest to recruiters at companies that you've created job alerts for. So I created job alert for Chicago School and one for Korn Ferry, right? For the purposes of this workshop. So if I go in here and say yes, that will alert recruiters at the Chicago School and Korn Ferry to the fact that I'm looking for very particular types of jobs at their company, which is kind of a cool thing to be able to do without actually reaching out specifically to the recruiters, because I might not know them. But this way, they are being alerted to the fact that I'm interested in working there, and these are the kind of jobs I'm looking for, if that makes sense. So that's something that you can take the time to set up in your profile, in your privacy settings. Let's see, yeah. So that's it. I passed over just a couple of things that I would have wished to be able to show you, but I do want to leave time for questions if there are any. Megan, has anybody been asking for clarification or?
We don't have any in the chat.
Okay.
Not yet. Lucas, have you gotten any on your end?
No, I haven't gotten any questions either. If anyone does have questions, now is a great time to ask. You can either feel free to unmute and ask the question, or if you want to just pop it in the chat box, I can ask for you as well.
What about Megan or Lucas? Any questions or clarification on anything that I covered?
I could ask a question. I had one while you were speaking. I was curious. So you were saying for like the ATS that you would want to put years of experience somewhere on your resume.
Yes.
Where would you recommend that? Where does that make sense?
Great question. So typically people will include that in the summary of qualifications, which will come towards the top of a resume. I've done that where I've put, X number of years experience in career services or in career counseling, just using whatever terminology they use in their job posting. But that's typically where you would add that.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions?
Looks like
I could ask another. Oh yeah, go for it.
If there is one.
One in the chat here. It says that Elka mentioned that the resumes are best sent in Word doc format. Larissa is curious as to the reason for this, as they've learned PDF is best for formatting purposes in case it is not supported on the recruiter's computer.
Yeah. So now what they're saying is that ATS systems, they tend to read Word documents better. I only know that's the latest that I've read, is that the ATS isn't always able to read the formatting on a PDF, that it actually changes when you convert. And so the system gets a little bit confused. So apparently a Word document, and I know we used to always tell everybody do it in PDF, but now they've completely changed their tune. And maybe it's because it's been used long enough and now they're realizing that there actually was a difficulty in reading PDF and that it should be Word. So that's all I know to tell you. I'm not an expert when it comes to, that technical stuff, and things do change, and that's one of the frustrations, right, of technology. Things are constantly changing, and so the information that we share with students, it changes too. So it's always good to ask multiple people and then to do research on your own. It can even be just as easy as Googling which way is better to submit. Right now, it's going to be Word document.
Okay, and then a follow-up question to that, can an ATS pick up text within a header and footer?
It cannot. So as I was mentioning earlier, if you put your contact information in a header, it's very likely that that will be lost and that recruiters will not know who submitted the resume. So better just to keep it very simple and just type everything in just a very plain Word document. It sounds boring, I know, but that's just what they're finding. And maybe one day, technology is always advancing. Maybe one day an ATS will be able to read all of those things that it can't currently read. Because for a while, templates were so popular, right? Everybody was using them because they look pretty and they just looked amazing. But there's so much formatting, and the ATS right now, they just can't read that because they're only parsing out the text, right? They're only looking for the words. So I came to this page because while people are maybe thinking about questions they want to ask you, I just wanted to show you that to me, it's one of the coolest things that LinkedIn does. If you go to the page of a school that you attended, so I went to Springfield College as a grad student, and if you go to their alumni link on their page, you will have access to all kinds of information. So there are almost 34,000 alumni of Springfield on LinkedIn. I can search by year, but here's everything I can learn about them. I can find out where they live, where they work, what they do, so what industry they're in, what degree they studied or received at Springfield, what their skills are, and how I'm connected. So I'm directly connected with 12 of the 34,000. But then my second jumps up to over 3,000. So that's kind of cool. So I could potentially connect with these people very easily through my 12 first connections. So if you're looking for somebody, who lives in New York, it narrows it down. So somebody who lives in New York and graduated in sports studies, and I scroll down, here they are. And then I can connect with them. So just a really cool way to do some networking with people who are connected to you because you went to the same school. So they're much more likely to say yes to the connection request than just a stranger. Anyway,
Okay, I actually had another question about LinkedIn requests. So I personally get like a lot of random LinkedIn requests, and usually I just accept them. But I know earlier you were like, it's not a good idea to like add everyone. So is it also a bad idea not to accept everyone, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's a very personal preference. If you feel comfortable, connecting. I mean, I know people who will just say yes to anybody who requests. I tend to see if we have mutual connection. Like, why do I think this person wants to connect with me? Do we work in the same industry? So sometimes it'll be a grad student who works in career services. I'm more than happy, right? To serve as a sounding board or a pseudo mentor or whatever it is that they might need, or do informational interviewing. But if they seem like really just random, then I will ignore it, but I might come back to it later when I have more time just to do some research. You know, how might I potentially know this person? Maybe we, you know, went to a webinar together and I just don't remember the name, or like, it could be all kinds of reasons, but personally, I tend to be more careful when connecting. Any other questions?
I don't have any more in the chat. Yeah, I don't. If anyone does have questions, please feel free to reach out. I know Elka, you included your email in the chat. Is it okay if people reach out to you?
Please feel free. And also I had let Lucas and Megan know that if you are interested in having me review your CV or resume, I'm more than happy to do that. So just feel free to email it to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Elka, for all of this information. I know that I took a ton of notes, so very thankful. And thank you to everyone who took some time out of your day to attend. I hope that you found this informational as well. So with that, everyone have a great day.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.